Every astrology channel you watch right now has been quietly building toward a single date for almost 2 years, and that date is finally here. Tonight's lunar eclipse at 4 degrees 51 minutes of Pisces is the closing note of an almost 7-year story that started when Saturn first dipped into this water sign back in 2023. The moon will reach maximum shadow around 4:13 UTC on August 28th, which is late evening on August 27th for the Americas, deep night for Europe and Africa, and a position below the horizon for much of South and East Asia. Most of you can witness this one in real time, but only if you know what to do during the actual window. In this video, I'm giving you 7 specific actions in the right order, and I want you to stay all the way to number 7. Now here is where I bring in my own observation, because most eclipse videos skip this part, and it is the part I think actually helps you. Over the last 10 days, I have noticed that the people in my inner circle, the friends I text weekly, the family members I talk to on Sundays, and even the people I have only loosely crossed paths with online, have started sending me the same kinds of messages. Old arguments resurfacing out of nowhere. Sudden clarity about a job they have been quietly tolerating for 2 years. A compulsive urge to clean out a closet they had been ignoring. Unexpected run-ins with an old friend they had not thought about since before the pandemic. That pattern is not my imagination, and it is probably not yours either. Eclipses on the Pisces-Virgo axis have historically pulled unresolved emotional loops up to the surface, and the fact that this is the closing eclipse of that long series means the loop is not just reopening, it is finishing for good. You do not have to do anything dramatic with that information. You just have to notice it. The energy of this particular eclipse is amplified by one thing most casual coverage forgets to mention, and that is Saturn. Saturn has been transiting through Pisces since early 2025 and will continue there through late 2026 in most mainstream systems, which means the moon tonight is essentially echoing the longer Saturnian story about emotional maturity, about quietly accepting that you are the adult in your own life, and about retiring the versions of yourself that the universe has been politely asking you to outgrow for almost 2 years. A regular full moon is a wave. This is a wave with a planet standing inside it. That is part of why no amount of casual visualization works tonight. You are being asked to do something slightly more honest than a vision board. Let me give you the 7 things now, in the order I would actually do them myself, and I will tell you why I sequence them this way. The first 3 are about creating a container for everything that is going to surface. The middle 2 are about releasing what is in the container. The final 2 are about deciding what comes next. If you only have time for 3 of them tonight, do the first 3, because they are the foundation. If you have time for all 7, do them in order, because the order is part of the magic. There is a real and well-documented effect that lunar cycles have on sleep architecture. Multiple peer-reviewed studies over the last decade have shown measurable drops in deep sleep and shifts in melatonin timing around full moons and a deep partial eclipse. Like this one amplifies that effect because the body keeps responding to incomplete light cues. You do not need to become a sleep monk to navigate it. You need to do 3 small things. Lower your screens an hour earlier than you think you need to. Eat your last real meal at least 3 hours before you lie down. And put your phone in another room, not face down on your nightstand, actually across the room or in a hallway. The reason this is number 1 is that everything else on this list performs dramatically better when you are not running on eclipse adrenaline and 4 hours of broken sleep. Tonight, Your body is going to be receiving a gravitational signal it does not fully understand. Give it the simplest possible conditions to process that signal. I am not talking about your whole apartment. I am talking about one specific zone, the drawer that has not been opened in 8 months, the corner of your desk where paper keeps piling up, the folder in your inbox labeled Old Projects that starts with the year 2020, the medicine shelf with 3 half-used bottles. Pick one zone and finish it tonight before the eclipse peak. Ideally before you go to bed, and definitely before the umbral phase ends at 5:51 UTC. The reason this works has less to do with astrology and more to do with how your nervous system reads visible proof that a chaotic loop has been closed. When your environment is in external order, your internal weather tends to follow. I learned this the hard way during the Lunar Eclipse series of 2024, when I cleaned one kitchen drawer and almost immediately ended a 3-year debate with myself about a piece of furniture I did not actually want. The drawer took 8 minutes. The decision took 3 years. Tonight, you are collapsing that gap. This one sounds woo-woo until you remember that the moon exerts its strongest visible effect on the tides of the planet, and your body is roughly 60% water. You are not the ocean, but you respond. During eclipse windows, I personally up my water intake by about 1 liter spread across the day, add a small pinch of unrefined salt or a few slices of cucumber, and I skip the 3rd coffee. Every eclipse client I have worked with in the last 4 years who does this one thing reports noticeably less of the buzzy, anxious, heart-racing sensation that the internet loves to frighten people with around lunar events. If you want to skip the woo explanation entirely, the physiological version is simply that hydration plus electrolytes tends to stabilize your nervous system during a day when your circadian signals are slightly scrambled by a bright moon that does not fully follow its usual pattern. Not a vision board, not a gratitude list, not a string of affirmations, just a written release. Mine usually looks something like this. I am done apologizing for taking up space in my own life. I release the idea that I have to earn rest. I am letting go of the version of me that performed productivity to avoid being seen. Write for 10 minutes, no editing, no crossing out, no censoring. Just let it pour. Then read the whole page back to yourself, actually out loud with your voice, before you close the notebook. This is different from writing privately because your ears tend to catch what your eyes tolerate. Reading it back is what turns a private complaint into a publicly heard boundary, even when the only audience in the room is you. Tonight, that private audience is enough. Not a confrontation, not a dramatic confession, just the actual conversation you have been quietly ducking. The one where you use the words, "I have been meaning to tell you," or "Can we talk about what happened last month?" or "I need to ask you something and I have been scared to ask it." Eclipses historically accelerate conversations that the universe has already decided are overdue, and a lunar eclipse in Pisces specifically pulls emotional honesty into the foreground. If you have been waiting for the right time, the window of the next 72 hours is the right time, and if you skip it, the conversation will usually force itself into a less convenient setting about 2 weeks later. I have watched this pattern repeat so often across the last 6 lunar eclipses that I now treat postponed eclipse conversations like postponed dental work. Technically optional, often a mistake. I am not telling you to run a half marathon or crush a high-intensity set tonight. I am telling you to take a slow walk under the actual moon if the eclipse is visible where you are, or to do 20 minutes of slow stretching on your floor if it is not. The reason this works during a lunar eclipse is that your proprioception, your sense of where your body actually is in space, tends to be slightly off during big lunar events, and gentle movement recalibrates it. There is also a symbolic layer, which is real whether or not you take it literally. You are saying, with your legs and your breath, that you are willing to walk into the next season. I did an easy 9-minute stretch routine during the 2025 Pisces eclipse, and a long, delayed creative project unblocked itself within 48 hours. That is one data point, but it is mine, and it is the kind of correlation I am willing to report, honestly. This is the move nobody is currently emphasizing in the eclipse space, and I want you to pay attention to it. After you have done the first 6 steps for yourself, do one small thing for someone outside your usual circle. A tip you leave for a stranger. A text to an old colleague you have been meaning to check on. A few dollars slipped into a vending machine for the next person in line. A genuine compliment for someone at the grocery store who has been on their feet all day. An honest review left for a small business owner who actually needs it. The astrological logic here is straightforward and rarely said out loud. The Pisces eclipse family is the most other-oriented sign in the zodiac, and the closing of this long eclipse series is asking you very gently to confirm that you have learned how to see beyond yourself. If you do steps 1 through 6 and skip this one, you will feel better, you will sleep better, you will make a cleaner decision, but the eclipse will not fully close. If you do this one too, the entire arc of the last 7 years finally has a real human landing. If you live somewhere, the eclipse is not visible, and this matters because the eclipse will actually be below the horizon for much of South and East Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the Pacific tonight. The energetic tone still carries, but you have to be honest with yourself about the limitation. You will not see the moon move into shadow, so do not pretend you did. Set your alarm for the moment of peak at 4:13 UTC and just sit in the dark with your eyes closed for 8 minutes. That practice is a real substitute for the visual experience because your sympathetic nervous system does not actually care whether your eyes are open right now. It tracks the gravitational signal through your inner ear and through the fluid in your spine, so the practice still works. Your kitchen at 3 in the morning is a perfectly valid temple tonight. Naturally, you may also need an inclusive catch, and this is the one most eclipse videos skip, so I want to say it plainly. If your zodiac sign was not specifically listed in the popular previews for this eclipse, or if you do not even read your chart, I want to include you here. The moon in Pisces does not only speak to water sign risings or sun in Pisces charts. It speaks to every human nervous system in fundamentally the same way, including yours. The closing of this 7-year eclipse series affects anyone who has felt pressure in their chest for the last month, anyone who has been quietly cleaning their home without a reason, and anyone who has been waking up at 3 in the morning with a sentence their brain keeps rehearsing. That is you too. Now let me tell you what to watch for in the 6 weeks that come after tonight, because the eclipse is not the moment. The eclipse is the door, and what passes through the door is what matters. In the first 7 days, expect at least one of the things you wrote down in step number 4 to actually materialize in real life. A conversation that you are not planning to have may walk right into your week. A door you had mentally closed may quietly reopen with a slightly different text. A piece of news you had been dreading may arrive in a much softer package than you imagined. In the next 2 to 3 weeks, expect a long, simmering financial question, A tax issue, an old invoice, a deferred raise, or a shared expense that has been hovering in the background to come up for resolution. Pisces lunar eclipse families have an almost comedic habit of pulling emotional debt, literal debt, owed apologies, and unspoken shared resources into the open. It may not be comfortable when it happens, but it will finally have a number attached to it. Around week 4 to 6, watch for a small but significant invitation. A coffee meeting that comes out of nowhere. A phone call from a person you have not heard from in 18 months. A DM that says exactly the words you needed to read on the exact day you needed to read them. This is the eclipse, confirming that the loop has officially closed, and the new chapter is now writing itself in real time. I am not promising that this will happen to you because I have learned not to overpromise what the sky is willing to put in writing, but I am noting that in my own life and in the lives of the people I track across these cycles, this invitation pattern is the single most consistent follow-up of a closing eclipse series. Let me also flag, with full honesty, that not every eclipse theme reveals itself in the same time window. Some people feel eclipse energy 2 days out, some feel it 14 days out, and some feel it 3 to 6 months out, especially when the eclipse is the closing note of a long series like this one. May you be on a different timeline than your friend. May your personal version land a little later than mine, and can you let that be okay? None of this is a guarantee. Anything I have said so far tonight is a possibility, not a prophecy, and I want to honor that distinction, because the moment an eclipse video starts sounding like it can see your future in vivid detail, you should stop watching it, including mine. Can we also have an honest word about the astronomically exact category for a second, because I want you to be accurately informed tonight. This eclipse is technically classified as a partial lunar eclipse, not a total one, even though, at 96% coverage, it will visually look stunningly close to a total blood moon. If you see a video on your feed later today claiming tonight is a total lunar eclipse, you can quietly scroll past, because that channel does not have the basic eclipse classification right. The category matters because how the light bends through Earth's atmosphere changes between full partial and true total, and so does the color, which is why tonight's moon will show a warm, reddish coppery gradient along the shadowed edge instead of the deep uniform red of a true totality. That copper edge is what we actually want to look at if the sky over your house cooperates. A few practical viewing notes for the photographers and the patiently curious. Do not use flash, because the moon is genuinely too far away for it. Do not over-zoom. Use a tripod, or set your phone on a stable surface with a 4 to 8 second timer exposure. You will be genuinely surprised how beautiful a deep partial eclipse is in a single handheld shot if your hands are steady. If you are watching it for the energetic and not the visual, do exactly what I described in step number 6. Slow movement, quiet breath, real body, a blanket on the grass if you have access to grass, a glass of water. The night does not require gear. It requires presence. Parents, listen to me for a second. If one of your kids wakes up tonight because the shadows in their room feel strange, that is not their imagination. Sit with them for a minute. Hand them a glass of water. You do not need to explain the moon or pretend you are an astronomer. Just be the steady grown-up in the doorway. That small act of calm will probably matter more to them than any eclipse you or I will ever film. Here is the part where I want to honor the spiritual protocol most channels skip. Pisces is the sign of forgiveness, of unsaid things, of water, of intuition, of dreams that arrive in fragments between 3 and 5 in the morning. This is the final Pisces lunar eclipse of this entire series, so anything unsaid, unconfessed, or unreleased since 2018 is about to come up for one last pass before the cycle rotates. Some of it is going to feel inconvenient. Most of it is going to be exactly right. The trick is not to flinch. Let me also tell you the thing the algorithm does not want me to say tonight. A lunar eclipse will not magically fix your life, and it will not magically break your life. It can, if you let it, function as a hinge. A hinge is a small mechanical thing. Two pieces of metal that let a door swing in a new direction. It does not move the whole house. Tonight, you are choosing whether to oil the hinge. The 7 steps above are the oil. The door actually swings on its own once you do that. One more honest layer before I land this. Can you carry a quiet intention into tomorrow morning that does not require a single word of formality? You do not need to repeat an affirmation. You do not need to buy a crystal. You just need to pick one small decided thing and let it be small. Mine, after this video records, is going to be renewing a lapsed professional license that has been haunting my to-do list for 11 months. I will share that here because it makes the whole advice less abstract. Your version can be the email you owe, the boundary you keep postponing, the doctor call you have been avoiding. Small decided thing, pen to paper, done before noon, around 6 in the morning tomorrow, after the eclipse energy has settled and the moon has technically exited the umbral shadow at 5:51 UTC, you may notice a particular emotional clearing, almost like a headache that lifted while you were not paying attention. That is the loop formally closing. Notice it. Write one sentence about how it feels, and keep that sentence. You will reread it before the next eclipse, and be surprised at how much changed in 6 weeks. The one part most eclipse videos skip is what to actually do during the different phases of the event itself. So I want to give you that timing map. If you can hold a single specific window tonight, make it the 197 minutes between 2:34 UTC and 5:51 UTC on August 28th, because that is the umbral phase when Earth's shadow is at its darkest and the symbolic pull on your nervous system is at its strongest. I tend to split that window into 3 small slots in my own practice. The first half hour I use for the journaling on paper step. The middle hour I use for the postponed conversation. Even if all I produce is a long, unsent draft, I will only review tomorrow morning. The last half hour I save for the slow body stretch on the floor, ideally facing the moon if it is above my horizon. Splitting the window like this gives the eclipse a structure instead of letting it wash over you in a sleepy blur, and the difference in how the following day feels is genuinely measurable. A friend in Lisbon tried this segmented approach during the October 2025 partial eclipse and told me 3 days later that his first week of November was the calmest he had experienced in 18 months. That is his data point, not a guarantee for yours. For 3 nights in a row, around the last major partial lunar eclipse I personally tracked, I had what I can only describe as unusually literal dreams, and that pattern has shown up often enough that I now plan for it. A woman I had not spoken to in 9 years appeared in one of those dreams and used a sentence I would not normally associate with her character. I woke up and texted her for the first time since the early pandemic months, and she responded inside 2 hours with exactly the question I had been quietly meaning to ask my accountant the following Monday. Eclipses on the Pisces line have a documented tendency to surface unprocessed material through the dream channel, because Pisces is the sign of the subconscious, and the full moon is the lamp that lights that particular room. If you remember anything from tonight's sleep, even a fragment, even a color, even a street you have not been to in years, write it down the moment your eyes open tomorrow, because the petty and strange ones usually carry more weight than the obvious ones. Do not try to interpret them yet. The interpretation has a longer window, and forcing it now tends to distort what the dream was actually pointing at. One layer I rarely see covered in eclipse videos is the orbital backstory, partly because it is clinical and not very cinematic, and partly because it tends to deflate the mysticism. This eclipse belongs to Saros Series 138, which has been generating lunar eclipses at roughly the same node of the Moon's orbit for the better part of a millennium, and will continue for another 2 centuries after tonight. What actually matters for you tonight is not the long history, it is the rhythm, which is that lunar eclipses in the same Saros family tend to repeat emotional themes, roughly every 18 years and 11 days, and tend to send a quieter echo of those same themes roughly every 9 years. That is part of why this particular eclipse may feel like a polite but insistent callback to something that happened in your life in 2016 or 2017, even if you cannot immediately name what the callback is. If a date flickered in your memory just now, write it down before you sleep tonight, because roughly 9 months from now, you may well see that same theme resurface in a cleaner and more workable form. The Saros cycle is not magic, it is orbital mechanics with a poetic side effect, and I think it is one of the most underrated context clues for any mature eclipse practice. A note on what not to do tonight, because I think the negative list is sometimes more protective than the positive one, and almost nobody posts a version of it. Do not open a brand new romantic pursuit between 2:34 UTC and 5:51 UTC, because the attraction will read as yours at the time and will read as the eclipse's the next morning, and the two will tangle. Do not sign a lease, a contract, or another person's invoice inside the umbral window. Do not quit your job in a text message while the moon is in shadow. Do not confront a family member in a chat thread that other people can see, even if the thread is technically private. Do not announce a big life change on social media just because the energy feels electric. All of those moves can absolutely be the right moves in a week, possibly even the right moves eventually, but the window itself is not the moment, and doing them inside the shadow tends to blur what you actually meant to do with what felt good to do in the moment. I learned this the hard way when I once sent a resignation email at 4 in the morning during a Pisces lunar eclipse, and then spent the next 6 weeks negotiating my way back into the same role. A small practice I want to quietly leave with you for the exact moment of peak at 4:13 UTC, whether or not the eclipse is visible from where you are sitting. Sit somewhere quiet. Close your eyes. Inhale for 4 slow counts through your nose, hold for 7, and exhale for 8 through your mouth. Repeat that exact cycle 9 times in a row, then sit still for 1 final minute with your eyes closed and your hands resting open on your knees. The 4-7-8 ratio is a real breath pattern used in clinical settings to settle the sympathetic nervous system, and 9 cycles is incidentally the same number of months between this eclipse and the next major one on the calendar in 2027, which can be numerology or can be coincidence depending on how you frame it. I have used this exact practice at 4 in the morning across 4 different Pisces lunar eclipses over the last 6 years, and the calmer I am at peak, the cleaner the next week's decisions tend to read when I look back on them. Please do not skip this one just because it sounds small, because small rituals are the ones that actually survive the night. Before I close, I want to leave you with a specific observation that is not technically mine, and I want to flag it because it changed how I prepped for tonight. A woman in my extended circle, a small business owner in her late 40s, texted me at 11 this morning to tell me she had just let go of a long-term client who had been underpaying her for close to 2 years. She did not ask for a raise, did not negotiate, did not hint. She ended the relationship by email and moved her afternoon around the new bandwidth. She told me she had been quietly rehearsing the conversation in her head since the start of August, and when the messages from her team started feeling heavier this week, she realized the eclipse energy was not going to hand her permission. It was going to demand the decision. Her words, not mine. I do not have a clean framework for that kind of unilateral move, and I am absolutely not recommending that you go let anyone go before bed tonight. But I am noticing that the people who feel most at peace the morning after a closing eclipse tend to be the ones who let it ask them one direct question and then answered it themselves. The question tonight may not be about a client. It may be about a quiet friendship, a parent, or a habit that costs more than money. Whatever it is for you, there is a reasonable chance you already know what it is, because you have known for a while. Closing thought, because I promised myself I would not drag the ending. The 7 steps are not a checklist to brute force the universe. They are a slow cleanup so that when October and November arrive, when the next eclipse season opens on a different axis of your chart, you are not carrying the leftover weight of a 19-year-old decision into a brand new season. Tonight is the cleanup. The future starts tomorrow morning with the smallest possible decision, made on purpose by a person who finally trusts themselves. If this video helped you, I would genuinely appreciate a like and a thoughtful comment. Not a generic fire emoji. Tell me in one sentence which of the 7 you are actually going to do. That single sentence tells me whether I am making videos that work for the people on this channel or whether I am wasting your time, and I take that seriously. Subscribe for the second part of this Pisces closing arc, because there is going to be a second part, and you do not want to miss it. Now go do step 1. Lower your screens, put the phone across the room, let the moon do its quiet, ancient job. I will see you tomorrow morning, Eclipse survivors.